Do you know who's watching your home or who's really behind that Discord avatar? Today, we're diving into the 2026 identity revolution, from Discord's mandatory biometric age scans to the high-stakes world of Chinese humanoid robots, where drunken fist kung fu masters are performing 3-meter aerial flips that blur the line between art and urban security. We're also reviewing the latest stair-climbing vacuums to see if the new iRobot Safe initiative can actually keep your 3D home maps off foreign servers. And finally, we're asking why a feathered robot dinosaur in a sweater has become the ultimate sedative for the modern doom scroller. Thank you. And I'm a giggling Lucien Taylor, an engineer in Oxford, a fan of AI, curious about robots now. That's become a new sort of curiosity for me. So really interesting stuff to talk about today.
I'm Emily Taylor, and as a policy person with a fascination for geopolitics and robot wars, I think we're having a moment at the moment, as you're watching the kung fu dancing and thinking about robots in warfare.
I'm Alice Taylor, and I'm a digital policy researcher and also a former speech and language therapist. So I'm always very interested in robots, what it means for motor skills, sensory integration. But I do want to pick up on the word feathered, which obviously we're going to see the clip later, but I don't remember any feathers in the robot dog.
Let's wait and see. Yeah. So finally, if you are, this is quite a niche topic, but it's growing in, other people are finding it more and more interesting. If you're interested in internet tech and policy in this sort of very niche area that stretches across all sorts of things like robots and AI, etc., please, you can follow the Internet Seriously podcast, and you can talk to your favorite speaker. We have a few of our handles on those podcasts and social media channels below Emily right now. Thank you very much for that, Emily. That reminds me of I think it was the Generation game.
I was thinking about the Generation game.
Yeah, and I could tell you had that twinkle in your eye. It was Anthea. who would show stuff.
And he would always give us a twirl. I'm not going to do that.
Discord is currently undergoing its most significant identity shift since its inception, moving away from the era of relative anonymity. The platform is rolling out a teen by default architecture globally in March next month, 2026. Emily, this is really interesting, isn't it? It seems to be applying the strictest regional laws like the UK's Online Safety Act to its entire global user base. Is this is the sort of Brussels effect, where one region's regulations become the global standard? Does it unnecessarily erode privacy for users in less regulated jurisdictions?
It is a very interesting approach, and I think a lot of the larger scale tech platforms are facing these dilemmas, and particularly backfilling security and identity checking is a huge cultural challenge, I think, for a mature platform like Discord, which has its roots in the gaming community and a lot of communities that really value that sort of online identity. So the Brussels effect means, as you say, sort of taking the highest bar of regulation and applying that globally. And we've actually seen that a lot in tech regulation through, say, general data protection regulation. Actually, companies are trying to comply with that, and that goes across the world, even outside of the jurisdiction. And I think that this is, the teen by default is a very uncomfortable backfill for a very libertarian type of environment. And of course, there's a huge backlash from the users of Discord.
Yeah, talking about the backlash, Alice, here's a low ball for you. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF, have raised concerns that facial age estimation tools are often underperform for people of colour and non-binary individuals. There's one for you to ponder. From a policy standpoint, point, what recourse do users have when these automatic gates sort of fail? Does this create a sort of verification tax where certain groups are forced to go through, give up more privacy on the one hand and just more hassle on the other?
So there's sort of two issues here. There's one which is the training data, as it were, for what is now a lot of automated and AI technology and verification being biased towards particular demographics and it not being representative of the full human population. But there's also a separate issue, which is the issue of marginalized groups on Discord. And for a lot of people who are queer, or people who for like good reasons wish to remain anonymous online, for example, scam baiters, who we work with a lot, Discord is a really useful platform because they don't have to provide their real name. They don't have their real name somewhere on a database that could theoretically be accessed by bad actors. So Discord, I feel like the Online Safety Act has really raised a lot of very key issues in this sort of discussion, because it's like you set out to make something like Discord without thinking about criminals and that it's going to be facilitating a lot of harm. You just think this is going to be really nice and there's all these legitimate reasons for maintaining anonymity. And what's been happening, obviously, like in the last 24 hours, there was a bug that sort of made everyone teen by default, made it so that you have to verify using one of these AI third-party verification tools.
I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Emily, Alice has raised a number of really big... I don't quite know how I feel about being teen by default. There's a big part of me that, wishes I was younger again. But does this signal the end of the pseudonymous internet? What are the long-term implications for, the people hiding their identity, using these massive sort of outreach servers and communication channels for things like political dissent and whistleblowing as a safe space?
It's really, it throws it into sharp relief, because what happens when we get technology to implement policy is we end up with a very rigid system. We as humans are really good at handling exceptions based on, the policy becomes ridiculous in this scenario. So do you want age verification to keep young children safe? Yes, absolutely. Do you want scam baiters to have their real identity revealed and put their children at risk of harm? Oh, no. Do you want everybody to have their private data leaked to the whole wide world and put them at risk? No, I don't. So we're asking technology to make very nuanced decisions, and because that's combined with hyperscale, you have to make very broad decisions that have ridiculous outcomes. And I think part of what Discord is having to grapple with, and you're seeing its constantly updated FAQs at the moment, frequently asked questions, is that its demographics are particularly sensitive to this sort of intervention. Particularly, I think we're going to come on to the choice of third-party operators that Discord has made and the links with controversial figures like Peter Thiel and other companies he's involved with. So the third-party operator that they're experimenting with is called Persona. It's partly funded by Peter Thiel, who is also a partner and co-founder of Palantir that works alongside governments. And there's a lot of fear within the Discord community, I understand, that data provided for identity verification will end up in the hands of governments, particularly at the moment where the US Immigration Enforcement Agency, ICE, is such a controversial figure.
Now, as an engineer, we are coming into my passion area, and this is something I've been seeing and saying for 2 years, is we are becoming the new era of electronic government ID verification, and that is now a new market, and it's colossal. and there are first movers in that space in the UK. You've got Yoti, you've got Credas, and I'm watching their prices in the last few months double because, and their prices are astounding for any kind of seamless engineering integration, because they know that us engineers have all been told by the policymakers, engineers, you've got this wrong, you've ballsed this up for 20 years, the internet is toxic and dangerous. We know that you can fix all the problems of the internet with Know Your Customer and digital ID verification, and there'll be no problems at all, and it will reduce all problems with the internet if you verify people's government documents. And the few, government document makers and verifying technology companies have kind of gone, wow, suddenly our technology, which is really boring, it just sort of scans stuff and does probability weighting, is sexy. Let's charge $7,000 for 100 document verifications.
Wow. People
will just pay for this shit because they've got to. And so I feel that we are coming to this age where these are the new big techs, the document verifications and the big document super banks. They are talking with Discord about third-party vendors like KID, which handles sensitive biometric and government data, but also zero knowledge proofs that are based upon your behavior and your patterns. So basically the technology is determining, Alice, that you stalk people's electronic behavior to find out and guess whether they're young or old or within those limits. Do you think that's going to buy with everyone?
Well, it's so interesting because, when you show your ID to someone in a pub, which, that's required in the UK, if you want to buy a beer, you have to show your ID if you look young.
Sorry, they don't take it away and scan it.
Yeah, you show it to someone, they look at it with their eyes, and that's one person, and then you get it back. Whereas with these ID verification systems, somewhere, even if it's temporary, a copy of your ID is stored somewhere, and that's ID that you are encouraged to keep really, secret online. And I think it's really interesting. I've done some work in sort of the financial sector and post-quantum cryptography, and one really key issue that came out was like all of the payment systems. Anytime you make a digital payment, it's going to some third-party system. And, if you're a bank, you're like, we just want to, look after people's money, and that's our primary goal. Cybersecurity, that's sealed off, and it's somebody else's problem. And any legislation and rule, they worry about it. It's not us. We're not, responsible. And that's exactly what's happening with this.
Emily.
So a couple of things on that. First of all, what Discord is saying it's doing with the age verification data is like it's on device.
We're back. For those of you that actually are interested in a black screen and no sound for at least 10 minutes, hello, welcome, I'm back. For those of you who may join or look at this in the future, our security system here has done what it's meant to do and completely cut out and rebooted and reinstalled parts of a laptop without permission. I talked to our engineers and they did actually say, well, the security's doing what it's meant to do, and if you ignore that many warnings, it will just do it during a show. So lots of empathy going on around here.
Some
but anyway,
victim blaming, human error mentality, which I think is
I just wanted to say one thing, which is, when you get to the end of one of those long phone calls, it's like, oh, yeah, and that's really nice to talk to you anyway. There's one more thing that I want to just quickly say, and it's boop, and the phone call gets cut off, and you think, oh, I've just talked for half an hour, and you both spend another half an hour trying to ring each other back, only to say, I love you. So there we are. It was that moment, because we'd just got to the end of a podcast discussion about Discord, and we were talking about the age inference algorithm that they've adopted, regulatory proportionality, and using third-party oracles to mediate who and should and should not be on Discord.
I had some stuff to say about that. I think unless everything got obliterated in the blackout, we have an example of how inference is not always as wonderful as you expect.
Can you describe
who are listening on the podcast? You've got a video of somebody with their thumb and a smiley face on it, and they're turning it to the left.
They're doing
and
age
they're turning it to the right, and they're getting their age verification of their thumb. It's now estimating the age, and it actually comes out with the answer, we think your age is between 11 and 13. But it doesn't notice that it's actually a thumb with a smiley face. There we go, 13 and 15.
It doesn't say you can't
the
use
technology, we are placing a lot of trust in technology to be right. We are also, Lucien, you mentioned in the earlier part of the discussion how, as a technology company, you now have age verification compliance burden. So most technology companies will make the decision we made, which is like, oh dear, we don't want to handle people's passports. Let's look for someone else to take that burden. And there's a few brave and opportunistic companies that have seen and seized the opportunity, who've gone, right, we'll do that difficult thing. And they're taking the burden off everybody. And the Electronic Frontier Foundation that you mentioned earlier, there's an amazingly powerful civil society voice that is currently a little bit out of step with the way policy thinking is going, because they are very much for the free and open internet, for anonymity, for freedom of speech, whereas the prevailing policy wind is, oh my goodness, the security issues are so awful that we need to do something. And the EFF have a "we were right and told you so again" kind of routine.
Yes.
And what's bound to happen is that there are going to be scandals and disasters with the age verification companies. But for now, they provide a useful bucket for people to throw all that responsibility into.
If you're willing to pay a fortune. I mean, the prices of digital document ID and verification, or even smart algorithms that take your thumb or whatever and decide how old you are, they cost an absolute colossal fortune compared to getting a business social media account, for example. And I think, wouldn't you say that the powerhouses, the proxy regulators like ICANN for domain name registrars, for example, amongst many others, are missing a trick here, because they've got a huge community of electronic providers who admittedly have all been in denial for decades about the reality of knowing their own customers, now need to find a solution to know their own customers. And rather than doing this in-house within their whole community and body, we're individually outsourcing, and there's no kind of shareability of resources or anything happening there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Lou. So I think the other thing I'd like to just bring up is something that Alice made. Maybe we got it, maybe not. But it's like, you show your ID in a pub, you show it in a shop, and that's a moment between you and somebody else. And it's like the ephemeral nature of that transaction. And technology defaults to storage and reuse and exploitation. And I can see that there is a maturing in the way that, like, Discord has thought through, well, what do we do? How do we recreate that ephemeral thing? So they're saying we don't keep it, stays on your device, it's deleted really shortly afterwards. So they're trying, and hopefully we will get there as we all learn by doing.
And we let them basically stalk everything that we're doing on Discord, just so that they can keep reminding themselves how old we are. In mid-February this month, 2026, China's annual Spring Festival Gala, Chunwan, the most watched TV program on Earth, transformed into a high-stakes tech demo. A troupe of humanoid robots primarily led by Unitary Robotics G1 and H2 models, performed a choreographed martial arts routine that has since gone viral. Unlike the stiff, singular movements of previous years, these robots executed drunken fist techniques, nunchuck routines, and 3-meter aerial flips with fluid, human-like agility. This spectacle wasn't just for entertainment, it was a deliberate showcase of China's embodied AI progress, utilizing real-time motion control algorithms to maintain balance during rapid off-center spins and weapons handling. You know, we've been fascinated by the Olympics and watching those phenomenal ice skaters, you know, doing stuff for like 4 minutes on ice, which is just extraordinary, and making no mistakes. You know, like one of them out of 4 made one mistake. I've been on ice, you know, once and just went backwards and didn't know why I was
also
going.
The one mistake is like a career ending.
It was.
Like huge
Floods of tears.
Just and like, well, you know, what would you expect from one mistake in figure skating?
Emily, what we're talking about here, your father, Professor O'Connor, was an inventor of a world engineering product in
artificial need replacement
and orthopedic engineering. Oxford professor. Well, he used to talk about not the sort of what they call a sort of domain specific, knowing what you're designing. You know, it's sort of where you know what you're programming for, to one where you don't. There's got to be endless variety. Tell us a bit about that.
He did a lot of work in knee replacement and also in gait analysis, so actually studying the way people walk and move, and watching those robots reminded me of that work. And I remember him talking, I think, Lucy, you've got a memory about him talking about the knee. I remember him talking about the difference in what you do with your hand when you're carrying an uncooked egg. Okay, so imagine carrying an uncooked egg, so you have to hold it tight enough not to drop it, but not too tight because you'll break the shell. And that's something very sophisticated that's going on between your brain and the hand, and you don't even think about it.
What they call is real-time reactive.
Yeah.
So you've actually got a mechanical function, your hands and pressure, but your brain is working at the same time.
Yes, and you're not even aware of it. And then imagine that in the other hand, you're actually carrying a fluffy chick that's wriggling, right? So you've got to not apply too much pressure, but you've got to stop it escaping. And these are two things that a human being can do simultaneously. You could carry that egg, you could carry that fluffy chick, but actually getting a humanoid robot to do that. I remember Tim Berners-Lee saying at this at an event, he's saying, you know, people, they talk about AI and immediately get into robot wars. And then roboticists are like, do you know how hard it is to get a robot to even walk? I was watching that program and I actually had this bizarre kind of like inception moment where I was asking an AI chatbot, is this real or is this AI enhanced? Because it doesn't seem even real that this could be so lifelike and also so different to a year ago. A year ago it was impressive but stiff. This year it's like, what? And what am I watching? They're dancing.
Alice, they were kind of dancing. They also had swords. And Alice, what you saw was this, they put kids in and the kids were smiling away as though they were ice skate dancers and everyone's happy. But you got these humanoid robots with swords. So they wanted to put this danger next to vulnerability in the same stage space. And obviously the message that they're transmitting is you can trust these robots even with children around.
Yeah. And with swords, isn't that powerful? I mean, to me as a speech therapist, like I did some placements and some work with neuro rehab patients, so people who've had a brain injury or a stroke, and they're learning skills again, like talking or eating and drinking, which is what we would get involved in, but also movement. And, I think even less than a year ago, there was the Robot Olympics. And I have to say, watching it was very like being in a neuro rehab ward in a hospital, because it's like the robots are running their race, and that's really nice. And on the side are lots of humans kind of like on standby, and then one of the robots will be running, and then it just kind of starts drifting off, and the humans are like, what? And try and catch it. Because it's like, to walk, it's such a skill. To talk, it's like you need to have postural stability of all the major muscles in your body for the fine muscles to actually be able to work. Because if you're trying to talk and you're all unstable, it's a lot harder. And it's a lot like there's so much detail. There's a reason that physiotherapy degrees are 4 years long. It's like there is so much theory and mechanics and
so it's the mess of life, isn't it? You're looking at the mess of life, and we had this with San Francisco cars as well. And I don't mean to drift, but it is this sort of reactive technology is so much harder than predetermined choreographed technology.
Can you Luce, could you just tell us a little bit more about that? Because that was your reaction as a technologist watching this display, is the difference between is it predetermined, do this movement,
yes,
and the robot learning from your gestures. Can you just tell us a bit about the difference between those two things?
We're going to talk in a bit about robot hoovers, and I don't want to jump into that, but they basically make a map of your home, and you can program this. It's like programming endless variables in a chess game. When you've got a domain specific environment, that's fantastic for computers. Where it's a real difficulty is the mess of life. And you've got then what you need is a reactive system that really is trained, and that's where you need AI to understand and make its own determinations. San Francisco cars, electronic cars, got stuck in a fire situation with fire engines, and the car wouldn't move out of the way because it just hadn't learned to deal with emergency situations. It has a real struggle with small animals like deer and dogs crossing the road suddenly. It just doesn't know how to handle that. The Oxford knee, the actual knee joint itself is not a hinge. The knee has lots of flexibility in all directions, but it only chooses to use that where it's really necessary. And you saw that in ice skating yesterday, where there's suddenly a bend or a flip, and you're watching people making those reactive decisions all the time. I think you probably are getting to the age where you can kind of see a robot doing a pre-mapped ice skating routine. I think we're nearly there. But it'd be quite boring because it's sort of perfect. But we are drifting into this sort of grand challenge in robotics, which is sort of robotics is, still locomotion, walking or flipping, or we're moving towards that sort of fine motor dexterity, that tactile
again,
sensors.
It really brings me back to like neuro rehab of, so like let's say someone's had a stroke and they've lost the ability to say "k." So you teach them to say "k" in their hospital bed, and they're really good at saying "k," but then they have to say "walk," which has got a "k" at the end, and then they've got to say a massive sentence with a "k" in, and then they've got to be able to be in a busy pub and say "k" when there's lots of noises and people aren't going to be as patient with them. So it's like, it's sort of that scalability of, and you can't prepare someone for every single situation where they're going to have to say "k," but you can try and train them to be able to say "k" in whatever life may throw at them.
In 2001 Space Odyssey, we see, and in Star Wars, robots as servants. And there are two aspects to this, aren't there? There's something that is deeply compelling. Why do I want a Roomba sweeping my floor? Why do I want a perfect robot dressed in whatever, making coffee for me and boiling an egg in the morning without question, even if I'm in a bad mood, without telling me off? What is compelling about that sort of master-slave sort of thing? And then Emily, the other side of that is what I call the invisible benefits. So you've got the visible benefits, which is slave who just does all the boring things in your life and smiles all the time and doesn't complain, versus what we call data sovereignty. China's planning to ship 20,000 of these units this year, and they're entering international homes and factories and doing, mapping, spatial maps and learning and potentially uploading this intel from deep within our worlds.
Yes, and science fiction for generations has told us how this ends, right? And we're, it doesn't usually end well.
Doesn't the sky go white?
Lucien, you and I were at the Munich Cybersecurity Conference last week, and we heard Sean Cairncross, a Trump official, in his opening remarks, talking about the clean stack and the China stack. And I'm like, what is he
That's it,
talking?
one or the other.
One or the other. So the clean stack means the US companies, and which is free from surveillance and privacy respecting. And then there's the China stack, which he placed in opposition to this. And I think one of the things that is going on that I'm really interested in is China is emerging and has emerged as a tech superpower. It is pouring resources into innovation and is jumping ahead of the market. So the US, which has always been the innovative superpower in technology, is now coming out with very alarmist and defensive posture. And it reminds me of work we did maybe 7 or 8 years ago on new IP, where we were saying, look out, China is actually designing a different internet that would fragment the internet, and everyone's like, oh, that would be awful. Now you've got the US administration seeming to advocate for a bifurcation in technology. Yet, what will happen? Mess. These cool robots, they're cool. Who wouldn't want one if you had the money? They're going to be shipped all over the world, and they are going to be they're going to be collecting a lot of data as they learn, aren't they, about our everyday lives, our intimate secrets, our homes, and everything that we treasure.
And another subject, really, do we care?
I think when it comes to potential planet-ending doom versus a cool thing that's quite fun and looks great on streaming, I think we all go for the latter, don't we?
The fun. Yeah,
the fun thing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, fascinating. This is going to roll and roll. We love robots, and we're going to keep on talking about this.
We didn't even get to talk about Robot Wars. Can I just
we can.
I don't just want to talk about Robot Wars for 1 second.
Well, you'll have to do it again next, because we're going to continue the topic of robots. So it's time for our technical review. Well, I thought there was going to be something there in between it on a sort of review trailer, but there isn't.
The laptop update was a devastating.
That's right. Part of the laptop
to this entire show.
Lost us our review titles, if we've even had one. Maybe we don't even have one.
We probably don't have one. We imagined it.
The robot vacuum industry has hit historic inflection point in 2026 following the collapse of Amazon iRobot merger and iRobot's subsequent restructuring. The landscape has shifted from convenience first to intelligence and mobility. And while Roomba models like the J9 Plus remain popular, and I think, Alice, you have this one, for their obstacle avoidance. Oh, right. Bands like Robot Rock, Dream and Ecovacs are now dominating the high-end market with vertical mobility, robots that can actually climb and clean stairs. So the reason why we're reviewing this, normally we'd have one and we'd bring it in, is that I'm interested in buying one. We have a whole flat layer of our property, and then 2 steps, and then another whole flat layer of our property. So I'm just doing a bit of research, and I thought I'd do it via this podcast, The Internet Seriously. So here we are. Alice, you have a Roborock,
A Roborock.
which is
yes.
not a Roomba.
Not a Roomba.
I just call it. Is everybody just calling them Roombas like everybody calls
like
a vacuum
Hoover,
vacuum
yeah.
cleaners are called Hoover,
Exactly.
and they're
So
not.
this
Yeah.
triggers me as a former trademark
Wasn't it funny
litigator.
that they're both vacuum cleaner related?
Well,
That
yes,
this happened?
isn't it? This is the trademark lawyer's nightmare, which is where your distinctive mark, Roomba, goes into the language and people
just being
describe
robot
the thing
Hoover,
as
yeah.
your thing, like, yes,
My-
Hoover. Hoover
My
lost their
Roomba
trademark.
is actually a Roborock Roomba.
So
Does it
thank you
climb
very
stairs,
much,
Alice?
Alice.
So we can see a
I'm going
video
to flow that
of
at you.
my Roomba
Oh, this is Alice's
versus
one.
one
Oh.
of my cats. So this was
What we're looking
one of
at
the
is a
debut
robot
journeys of the
approaching
the
a cat.
Roborock, and my cat's relationship with the Roomba, which has been one of fear but also curiosity, because she
Now-
could run away, but she chooses not to. She
Emily-
likes to monitor.
Oh,
Roomba.
poor cat. Emily, I'm gonna come back to the cat's data and iRobot safe matters, and whether the cat,
The cat.
whether it's going to have its privacy protected with this Roborock. But first of all, Alice, I want to just dwell on this sort of thing, the stair challenge.
Yeah.
It's hailed as the year of vertical mobility. We've got a friend who's paralysed, very, very seriously disabled. When he comes into our house, until recently, I was embarrassed to say we had a very small step into our. Well, it wasn't really a step; it was just a piece of wood. And he said that that's the worst thing. It's worse than a step. It's actually an up and down in one go. And the chair's
Like
designed
a door threshold.
a door,
cover. Yeah.
and it was very disabling. These are hugely important factors, aren't they? If you're looking at not just robots to sweep up a bit of cat dust, but also generally.
I find it really interesting the way that, I sort of joke about with my Roborock Hoover. I'm like, it just makes you so lazy, so spoilt so quickly, because you're like, I can't believe that it only does downstairs and I have to carry it upstairs and it doesn't even do the stairs. But then, like anything that's like this started out as a way of making life easier for disabled people. And it's like I saw this video of someone with this device you can clip onto a guitar where you can play a whole chord by just pressing one button. Everyone just gets so angry straight away. They're like, "What? Oh, you're going to ruin music. Why not just learn how to play chords?" And it's like, this was invented for people who can't put their hand in a chord position because they've got a disability. And it's like, we just don't seem to remember that there's so many people that exist for whom a Roomba that can do stairs as well would be a life-changing bit of independence for them.
Am I just eating crazy pills? We were talking earlier about China's, humanoid unitary robotics G1 and H2 models, choreographing martial arts routines, and the desire for a Roomba to go up the stairs. We're moving towards the humanoid robot, aren't we? That can just get on with your cleaning all over the place.
Yeah, I'm interested that as well as the sort of the martial arts display in the Chinese robots, part of the marketing videos are a robot doing your washing up. Now, who wouldn't want a robot to do their washing up?
You've got one. Emily, I know you've been bursting to talk about this. Data sovereignty and iRobot Safe. Basically, iRobot recently established iRobot Safe to keep US consumer data on domestic
really sorry,
servers.
it's literally called iRobot.
Is it really called
Like-
iRobot?
Yeah,
like
iRobot Safe.
the
Asimov
dystopian
book about...
nightmare.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's...
Now you're thinking of Terminator.
Oh, I'm thinking of
iRobot's
Terminator.
the-
iRobot's the policeman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was
Thank
it? Will
you for that.
Smith.
Yeah. Anyway, iRobot Safe. In an era of embodied AI, can a subsidiary truly wall off the data? Now, you were talking about at the Munich Cybersecurity Conference, talk about what they call Safe Stack, which is a whole. Basically, the internet is in the USA, if they're going to put the internet in the USA and you're actually developing iRobot Safe in the USA, that's not just US consumer data on domestic, what they call domestic US servers, is it? It's everybody's.
I was intrigued by Sean Cairncross, the Trump officials' demarcation or division of the world into the US safe stack and the China stack, because there's a lot of other countries in the world that might not feel particularly comfortable having to choose. And, data sovereignty, digital sovereignty is a theme that has run through digital policy, particularly in the European Union, especially post-Snowden, where even amongst allies there was a huge amount of tension about the processing of European Union citizens' data in the United States by large tech companies and what happened as a result. And so the obvious answer then appears to be like, well, let's keep all of our data within our national borders, then it's going to be safe. And a lot of countries have gone that way. The true pure internet reasoning behind that is like, that's just a ridiculous approach, because the internet wants to be borderless. Data needs to flow seamlessly across borders, and when you do things like digital sovereignty, it often has the reverse effect of what you want on security and privacy, because it actually often in some countries will lead to access to data by their government in ways that they haven't anticipated.
And I've got two examples of where that, they say if you want to know the future, look at the past. You've got two examples where they've tried to sort of nationalise stuff and concentrate it in one country. Once was France Telecom introducing a countrywide internet just before the boom of the internet, and it was completely crushed by what people really wanted, which was cross-border data sharing and information sharing. The other is TikTok USA, which went dark because it wasn't American, and you watched a lot of people switching immediately, young people switching and signing up to Chinese terms and conditions.
Yeah. What was that? Red Note.
Zhao Huangshu, Red Note.
Thank you very much. That's our review of robot hoovers. It's all robots today, and actually we're going to finish with our doom scroll of the week. Which is also on the topic of AI-powered robots. In the early months of this year, 2026, a strange digital sedative has emerged for the chronic doom scroller, a hyper-realistic AI-powered robot dinosaur, specifically, and I believe this is a real word, specifically the Dobot Sinosauropteryx, which is a small, I can hear mutters in the background, a small...
I think that was a very impressive attempt at what?
Sinosauropteryx, a small feathered bipedal robot has gone viral on TikTok. Unlike cold industrial humanoids and humanoid robots.
Right, I'm sorry. The video I have seen, there is not a feather in sight.
Okay,
so I don't know what you're
video.
talking about.
Can we see the video, please, of the robot?
So the video is actually a quadruped robot, and it's called Brambles the Dinosaur.
Brambles?
I think there's been some wires crossed, and this is a different...
Can we have a look?
Yeah.
Dogs alone. Right. Once again, it's not the dog.
That's feathered.
Show
got
me a feather.
scales.
It's not.
Where is there a
So
feather?
we are watching
Hello.
Bramble going into a market.
A robot dog
It's
dressed
beautiful.
in a dinosaur costume.
It's not a dog.
And people think it is.
It's
'cause
not a dog.
It's a dinosaur.
Exactly.
They think
Don't
it's a
make
dog
good
dressed
bags,
as a dinosaur.
Hello. It's all right,
Okay.
it's just a dino.
It's just the dino. There we go.
Jump. Whee.
Ah,
And he
super.
jumps.
Aye, off he goes. Way, go by.
Okay. This I look. Let's be clear here. Nobody suggested it had feathers. It was feathered in design, which is a very different thing, and it's a
This is a
bipedal
different
robot.
dinosaur.
Unacceptable.
Okay.
Bramble
It's,
is a robot dog dressed up as a
editing
dinosaur.
of history
And
to
it's-
erase feathered.
The thing here, and it's from Pia, who is behind the camera today, and this is her doom scroll of the week. What attracts you to this one, Pia?
It's more that it just keeps appearing for me. I sort of scroll 3 or 4 videos and another one comes up.
And is it a different
The
video
same-
each time of the same dog
Most times
robot
it's different.
dressed up
Sometimes
as
I
a
get
dinosaur?
sometimes I get like different accounts posting the same video.
Do you
Can
see
I-
feathers at all?
No, there are no feathers.
No feathers?
Can I put something to you, Pia? For a user base exhausted by 2025's heavily political news cycle and dead internet theory, these creatures, would you agree, offer a unique form of whimsical escapism? Basically, they represent a branch of embodied AI that's designed not for labour, but for companionship and aesthetic delight.
I think they're incredibly whimsical. Who doesn't want a dinosaur pet?
I don't
clearly
know
you
if
don't.
I'd like maybe a baby dinosaur, but I wouldn't like a grown-up dinosaur.
Oh no, one like
Not like
Brambles,
the
a
one in
small
the video.
baby.
Oh,
Is that
it
a
might
baby?
eat me.
I-
Oh, an
wouldn't eat
actual
you.
dinosaur. I'm talking
Another
about
thing
an
I
actual
made-
dinosaur.
I could put to you, Pia, is that critics and psychologists are observing a digital limbo effect, where basically you as a doom scroller observing this feathered dinosaur use these
He's not feathered.
rep-
No
use
feathers.
these repetitive, cute robotic loops as a buffer to avoid reality.
Oh, absolutely. It's such an easy way to avoid reality.
Yeah.
Do you
Showing
think
me a
it's
dinosaur
also-
in the local shops.
Pia, do you think it's the thin end of the wedge to warm us up to having robots in our lives? So you get a cute little dressed up
A gateway
dino
robot, you might say.
a gateway robot to then, pave the way for the kung fu dancing robot that's actually going to take place in Robot Wars.
See, my thing is, I think Alexa and Google Home were the gateway. They were the first that I recall in my life.
So, also, Pia, do you have this? Have you observed this phenomenon that everybody is nasty to Alexa?
Absolutely.
It really
I regret to inform you I am.
awakens the nastier side of human beings, doesn't it?
Well, there is also this whole technical side where you're actually with your Roomba and your feathered robot. They're acting as hubs to mediate intelligence in your smart home as well. Whether that's going to depend upon cloud services and the internet, like the Sonos loudspeaker system, which disastrously centralized its intelligence in the internet, or the sort of Philips Hue lights that have their
I have
own
one
network
short
between them.
point to make, which is I've said before on this show, and this was again about sort of assistive technology, is that humans are not optimized to keep a house clean and to cook meals. Like a Roomba doesn't look like a person, and I think actually instead of humanoid robots living in your home doing all the housework, creepy, not optimized to actually do those tasks, we're going to instead see more and more of like little roboty things like Roombas that are purpose built to do one task really well.
Wow, I thought you were going to tell me off about feathers. So relieved. Anyway, the
lot to say on
dinosaur and the Roomba as a network hub, Emily, rather than a cloud-mediated information sharing system.
I'm not sure I can really speak to that one. You can better than me, except that any smart device is usually rubbish at security. And that has been the case for 10 years. I don't see that there's very much difference now, except that the smart devices are much more fun. They sometimes have feathers, and they do more fun things. But ultimately, smart devices, millions and millions and millions of them, have rubbish cybersecurity.
Thank you. We're just about there. If you like what we're talking about, please follow our podcast, The Internet Seriously. We have a few handles, social media handles that are being displayed in front of Alice right now, and she's doing an Anthea Turner from the Generation Game with those. Today, we've been diving into the 2026 identity revolution from Discord's mandatory biometric age scans to the high-stakes world of Chinese humanoid robotics. We've also been talking about a black screen and saying nothing at all for 10 minutes. And then finally talking about our stair climbing vacuum cleaners, and our feathered robot dinosaurs.